Hello fiber friends! When I started this channel, I did not think I would go from spinning wheel tutorials to Taylor Swift. And really, we're not. We're talking about crochet today. And I'm actually working on a little bit of crochet because crochet has become very trendy. Trendy enough, in fact, that very stylish billionaires, super pop stars like Taylor Swift are wearing crochet to be photographed by paparazzi on date nights. I didn't necessarily want to see those pictures. The algorithm kind of showed them to me against my will. I don't have a problem with people who enjoy Taylor Swift. You know, it's fine. But I think the algorithm knew that I click on stuff that's fiber art and she was wearing a crochet dress. I think really that's what the algorithm was up to when it clocked me and said, you'll click on anything that's crochet. So here you go, crochet. And it's true. And then I got inspired and now I'm making a cardigan. I'm crocheting. I haven't crocheted in a really long time. Like, crochet was actually my first fiber art that I learned, but I was a kid, and mostly what I would do is turn balls of yarn into really long chains of stitches, and that was about it, because I was like 5. But, you know, it's a fiber art, and I love fiber art. I love making yarn, and I like making things from yarn. So the pattern that I'm attempting is called the Willowdale Crochet Cardigan, and I'm using this Patons linen. It's a linen blend, which I like linen. I'm growing flax in my backyard. I am going to do all of the things to it to turn it into fiber that I can spin on my spinning wheel. This is some flax right here, and then once I spin it, it becomes linen. Yay! There, we'll put her like that, and then you can kind of see there. It's aesthetic, right? We love that. All right, so let's talk about crochet. When crochet goes viral, like, there's two things that happen to me. I get excited because I'm like, yay, someone's gonna see that and say, I bet I could learn how to do that. I bet I could make that myself. And they come into the wonderful community of fiber arts and they become empowered, because learning how to make your own clothing, there's nothing like it, in my opinion. Of course, I'm biased. But really, truly, I think it's just the coolest thing to see something, say I want that, and then to make it. I love when there are people that we can welcome to this, you know, wonderful side of the internet or what have you, and get some hooks and some yarn in people's hands, maybe eventually a spindle, and get people creating. Like, actually creating. Like, that's incredible. And I really don't like the term influencer, but it's kind of what it is. And yes, this video is sponsored. We'll get to them in just a moment. You know, but that is kind of how this part of the economy works. And of course, Taylor is a very influential influencer. So she wears this dress. I could track it. You know, there were people on TikTok showing the yarn they got, the pattern, the stitches. They figured it all out from the pictures and they started creating it, and they had, you know, crochet alongs, and that was really cool to see how quickly that happened in the community. But then also the other side of it, which just absolutely makes my heart sink, and that is to see that crochet dress appearing on fast fashion websites so quickly. And if you already crochet, you already know why that's an issue. If you are new here, if you just came here because you saw Taylor Swift and want to hear someone talk about the dress, welcome. You are welcome here. I promise, I'm not here to bash Taylor. Not everybody is going to have the inclination or the desire or the time, the resources to learn how to make their own stuff, right? So some people want to purchase an item and they see someone wearing it, they think it's cute, they want to buy it. That's influencer culture. I think that at some point, we as individuals have to like put a pause and say, why am I buying this thing? What is the impact of me buying this thing? Do I need this thing? All of that. And that's where it starts to get tricky. And so that's what I want to talk about. And because we're talking about crochet, I thought it would be a good time to invite my friend Alysha from Littlejohns Yarn to come and have a chat with us about crochet. And when I get back, hopefully I will have another round done. Alysha, would you like to tell us a little bit about what you do and how we can find you online?
My name is Alysha Littlejohn, aka Littlejohns Yarns. I am a crochet pattern designer. You can find me on all places at Littlejohns Yarns, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, everything Littlejohns Yarns, and I've been crocheting for the past 30 years, so I think I know just a little bit about crochet. Not everything, but just a little bit.
Absolutely, and I'm so glad to have you here with all of your experience and expertise. So let's talk a little bit about trendy crochet and fashion, and especially celebrities wearing crochet items. Who have you seen wearing some crochet pieces?
Over the past couple of years, I've seen so many celebrities taking interest in crochet, which warms my heart. What was it, a couple years ago? It was Bella Hadid and Rihanna with the bucket hats. Even, I think Rihanna had a crochet dress. Taylor Swift crochet dress. You cannot get on social media without seeing this dress a billion times. So very popular.
Absolutely. Even, if you're a Swiftie or not a Swiftie, you're going to see that dress.
Yeah, everywhere.
Everywhere. So let's talk a little bit about what kind of an impact those trends have on the crochet community. And an example of this that I have seen came from People Magazine, where People Magazine has printed these articles. Well, they'll say something like, it just cost $11 or some ridiculously low price. What do you have to say for people who say that crochet is so cheap?
I've always said crochet is a craft of love. It is something that people has always given away for free. So a lot of people don't understand the value and the time that goes into it. Crochet cannot be made by machine. You can have a knitting machine, but the intricacies of crochet is impossible. And so therefore, with People Magazine saying, oh, just for $16, you can make this whole dress in 3 days. It depends how great of a crocheter you are. That dress 3 days might be fast for somebody. It might be 3 weeks for another person. And the amount of yarn that goes into it, it's going to be more than $16. Like I said, they truly don't understand the time and blood and sweat and tears and love that goes into this craft. It's taken for granted.
And just like how you say, you've got so many years behind you of experience in doing the craft. When you say it's just $11 of yarn, that doesn't take into account the time it takes to learn to become proficient either. And I think that overall, that gives such a perception that it should be cheap, and it really shouldn't be cheap. But then people look at fast fashion and they see, oh, look, it is cheap. But is it really? Who's paying the cost when it comes to crochet in the fast fashion industry?
Who's paying the cost? The people who are making it. I've heard a lot of people like, oh, I can get that cheaper on Shein, or I can get it cheaper on this other fast fashion site. You're going to get a halter top that costs $25. In places like China, India, Bangladesh, their hourly wage in Bangladesh is like 38 cents an hour. These are barely enough to make a livable wage. So yes, the person in the United States or in the Western countries are getting the financial benefit, but at whose cost? Are these people able to eat off of this shirt that took them a day and they only made $3 off of it themselves in the whole day? That's horrible.
The places that now that labor has moved to, there's a reason it's gone there, and that's because they can skirt around all of the safety precautions, and that's heartbreaking.
These people are living in the same factory that they're working in. There's no other opportunity to make any other job. These manufacturing jobs is the only choice that they have. Yes, you think, oh, why don't you just get another job? This is all there is.
So when we purchase, especially crochet, because of the labor intense nature of it, through fast fashion, it is absolutely going to be harming people.
I also want to go back into how it hurts people, not just the people who are making it. A lot of these patterns or these outfits that are crocheted that are taking on Shein are stolen from indie crochet designers. I've made a video where you can see match for match, stitch for stitch, These are stolen materials. And there's been a lot of like urban Black crochet designers. A lot of their outfits are more, like I said, sheen, young. They are taking advantage of these more urban or Black designers.
Sometimes they don't even change and take a different picture.
They steal their picture.
Then it's up on these fast fashion sites, and
the little man can't do anything about it except watch their items being stolen. That Taylor Swift dress, I guarantee, is it on fast fashion already? Is it?
Oh yeah, definitely, because of course it is.
There's a loophole. If there's a third party, let's say that third party buys from a sweatshop and now they own it.
And then they say, oh, but we didn't have anything to do with that. Talk to the supplier. That's their problem. They're the ones in charge of that.
That third party now sells through fair trade. They didn't make it to another company, and now their hands are clean.
All of the terrible things, it just goes on and on and on, and it's horrible. What can I do?
Thrift our items. We can exchange items. We can make our own items in order to help these indie designers. Even myself as a crocheter, I support them. I will buy crochet or make your own. Spend the time, learn the pattern, find a wonderful crochet designer, make it yourself.
I know that a lot of people who regularly watch me will appreciate you talk a lot about crochet history. What was your favorite tidbit of history to learn about crochet and some of that research you've done?
Oh, my favorite is the very first crochet influencer.
Eleanor Riego de Lebras-Chaudière was born in a privilege in France in 1828, at a time when few people had the privilege of publishing. Her social class allowed her access to the printing press. In 1846, at only 18, she published her first crochet book.
She made over 100 crochet patterns. So I love the very first crochet influencer. That's my favorite part of history.
Alysha, thank you so much for joining us here on the Jilly and Eve channel. I hope everyone will go and check out your work as well. I just really appreciate you coming and sharing your knowledge and experience and expertise with us.
Thank you for having me.
Oh no, I just worked the tail. Try that again. Okay.
And then chain 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then you do a single in the corner. Okay, and then we chain 3, 1, 2, 3, now we do another single.
Huzzah! I got around the round that I had to do all the counting. I was told by someone that if you think you can count, try crochet, because no you can't. And now I understand. Because it's true. I saw in a lot of places online where people were starting to have this conversation that people were accusing Taylor of wearing fast fashion and saying that that dress was fast fashion. I think part of that discourse and part of why, Taylor Swift especially gets this kind of treatment. We think, why would someone with the resources that, a international super pop star has, why would they not wear only ethical fashion? Why would they not, invest in that? I think it's good to be aware of when we start to imagine things about the person, like imagining that, of course, Taylor Swift must have the same values as me because I love her music. But does she though? I don't know. I'm not sure that I want to hear hot takes from every famous celebrity person because their life is pretty unique. It doesn't reflect, the average daily living situation of most people.
Let them eat cake.
Who took the bomb?
They're not relatable. At that level of wealth, there's nothing relatable about that to the average person. I've heard some really bad takes from famous people. Imagine if every famous person had to be an activist for every legitimate, justified, every true and righteous cause. Anyway, we're getting a little out of the scope of this video. When the discourse around the crochet dress that Taylor wore started up, I was seeing a lot of people referring to it as a fast fashion dress and being disappointed that she would promote and wear fast fashion. So, was it fast fashion? I initially was with them. I was like, yeah, it's fast fashion. But then I thought, wait, do I know for sure? So I reached out to the company that made the dress. They are called Verge Girl, and they are a fashion company that is located in Australia. I sent them an email and asked a bunch of questions. The first question was, do you consider yourselves a fast fashion company, a fast fashion brand? And here's what they said. No, we are a design-led business working around seasonal collections. Our timeline from design through to release date is upwards of 11 months. We don't design based on trends, and we have our own creative vision that directs our collections. Our products are designed to be worn on repeat, with quality being a priority focus for us. I do think it's an important distinction to make that fast fashion is meant to be fast. They duplicate the runway designs as quickly as possible, sometimes turning things around within a week or two. And they don't have their own designs. They are copying based off of things that they see on the runway or other places, stuff that goes viral or what have you. Next, I asked, what was it like behind the scenes for your company when the photos of Taylor Swift wearing your dress hit the internet? Were you experiencing what I assume was a frenzy? They said it was exciting for the team to see someone of her profile wearing Verge Girl. However, the reaction on social media is much more animated than real life. We remain focused on our mission of inspiring creativity and confidence through style. Because I knew that the crochet community had already figured out the pattern for the dress and was already making their own dupes of it, the next question I asked was, how do you feel about individual crafters and crochet artists recreating the look? Meaning, a person makes a dress to wear for themselves and maybe a second dress for a friend. Verge Girl replied, we are all for it. Our team is made up of creatives and it is at the core of our DNA. We even had a staff crochet evening last year. And they sent me some pictures of their crochet night where they made some cute little crochet bags. As mentioned before about fast fashion and Verge Girl taking up to 11 months to produce their designs, fast fashion brands have already started duplicating this dress. Some I even saw for as little as $19.58. That is so cheap. I don't even know how they're covering the cost of the yarn. Is it just a dress that they're screen printing a crochet design onto? I have no idea. So my next question was, how do you feel about fast fashion brands recreating the look to sell knockoffs? Meaning a company sells large quantities of the dress for online purchase. Verge Girl replied, unfortunately, that is the way the fashion industry operates in many cases. Trends are often serendipitous, so many large retailers place their focus on short lead times rather than innovation and creativity. I wanted to investigate the question of ethical labor practices because I am personally still skeptical about ethical crochet being possible for affordable prices in a mass market kind of a scale. So I investigated their website to see what they had to say about their ethical practices in regards to production. This is what Verge Girl has on their website under their design and manufacturing section. They say that their products are designed in-house in Australia and manufactured in China. I wanted to get some more detail on this, so I asked a clarifying question. Do you have a full detailed copy of what your ethical trade policy outlines for ethical standards of employment? For example, working hours and wages is vague. Is there an 8-hour limit to work days, weekends off, etc.? Yes, the ETP is a document that was put together outlining the standards of employment and working conditions we expect of our manufacturing partners. These standards were taken from the Ethical Trade Initiative and not created by Verge Girl. If you would like to see further detail about what the Ethical Trade Initiative includes, I have a QR code you can follow or a web link that's the same as what the QR code would take you to. It is very detailed and includes things such as reasonable hours to work per week and extra pay for overtime, things like that. So Verge Girl also says that separate to this, they have been requesting and commissioning independent SMETA audits of all our suppliers. SMETA, which I believe is typically pronounced SMETA, stands for the SEDEX Members Ethical Trade Audit. This is an independent audit that is meant to provide transparency for a company that is working with a supplier. This independent audit is meant to be the accountability and transparency within the supply chain between the company that is purchasing from the supplier and the conditions of production that are on the other end of that supply chain. Verge Girl goes on to say, we still have lots to learn in this area and are always striving to improve. We are always evolving and will be adding more to our responsibility page as we continue to achieve our goals. Having the ETP agreement in place and conducting independent audits on their supply chain and their suppliers is so much more effort than I have seen from any of the notorious fast fashion brands. So I am really happy to see that Verge Girl is making efforts towards ensuring that their supply chain is conducting themselves ethically and that the workers are being treated fairly. So if you'd like to read more about these things, again, I have the links and you can get further details there. Next, I said, I appreciate your intention to reduce overproduction. Has the demand for the mirror dress tested your resolve to reduce overproduction? I'm sure you are hearing from many customers who are disappointed you have sold out. Verge Girl replied, to be honest, no. We have made efforts to create availability for the dress to the extent that production standards, employment conditions, and quality are unchanged. We won't be swayed to change our stance on these things due to demand based on a trend. Our attention remains on what we are working towards and our vision. Whether it's possible at all to have ethical production of crochet in a mass market situation, is that even possible? I think that this is an open discussion that we need to continue having. I'm not sure, honestly, if it is, but I do find it interesting that this crochet dress uses a simple stitch. So this again goes back to ensuring that the supplier is able to produce the resupply within the time frame and that people are going to be paid for their labor. As per the Ethical Trade Partnership, we can see that the employees in the supply chain creating these things for Verge Girl, they are being paid hourly, they are receiving a higher wage for overtime, and overtime is optional. It is not forced, as that would violate the agreement, their ethical trade policy. So that is something that I think comes up with crochet. When we talk about how many hours it takes to create one crochet garment, that person is spending all of that time creating one garment. There is a difference between receiving an hourly rate, where if a person takes 12 hours to crochet a garment, or if they take 14 hours to crochet a garment, they will be paid for every hour that they work, versus piece rate. Piece rate is when they are paid for the items that are completed. So if someone takes 12 hours to finish a garment or 14 hours, they receive the same wage. It's a terrible system for paying employees. It leads to abuses, poverty, all kinds of it's bad. It's not a good system to pay employees. So I am happy to know that the Verge Girl, the end of their supply line creating these crochet pieces, that they are being paid hourly, as far as we know with the information we have. And I think that that is a nuance to the crochet conversation that often gets missed. And I do think that that factors into the quantity that the manufacturer is able to produce with being able to pay the employees for their hourly rates and not putting too much pressure on extra overtime hours and things required to be able to meet their agreement for resupply. Let's talk about acrylic. I said, you have a statement on your website about opting for natural materials. The mirror dress is 100% acrylic. Do you have plans to reduce acrylic in the future as you have done with polyester? They replied, we have reduced our reliance on synthetic fabrics, however, sometimes they are still the best choice for the garment or parts of the garment. We are committed to using better/natural fibers wherever possible and always working to improve in this area as well. Friends, again, we are having a nuanced conversation about this. Acrylic is not great. We know the environmental issues that plastics, and acrylic is a plastic, it's a petroleum-derived fiber. There's a lot of problems with those fibers. That said, there are also problems with natural fibers. Let's talk about, say, cotton as an alternative. Cotton is not issue-free. It is a natural fiber. It's not going to put microplastics into the oceans, but cotton has a huge pesticide load. Those pesticides affect the workers that are exposed to them. It affects people who are in those communities near where the cotton is being grown. The labor involved in growing and producing cotton, there are very serious issues with cotton production. Cotton is an incredibly thirsty plant, and pushing for more cotton production has led companies to plant cotton in areas that it should not be grown because they don't have the water resources to water the cotton, and it is leading to desertification. It is draining aquifers and water reservoirs, and it is robbing the people in the community of the water that they need to live and exist, because human beings need access to clean and fresh water. So cotton has problems. There is no fiber that is without issues. And when they talk about having a garment that uses the fiber that's best for the purpose, this is meant to be a beach cover-up. Can you imagine wearing a cotton crochet dress to the beach and having it get wet and having sand stick in those stitches? Have you ever walked around with wet, sandy jeans? Like, it's making my elbows itch just thinking about it. It's a sensory nightmare for me. And so I do think in this application for a beach cover-up, wool isn't going to work. For this purpose, acrylic is the right choice. But then we're back to the whole mass production issue. So as I said, these are not simple questions with simple solutions. There is a lot of nuance here. And in the end, we do have to wear clothes. We need to have clothes. I don't think there is one right solution that will be correct in all circumstances and in all the ways. And the final question I wanted to ask them was, you have a statement that you are committed to size inclusivity. Your current size range is in Australia 4 through 16 or US 0 to 12, but the majority of the population is a size Australia 16, US 12, and above. Does Verge Girl have plans to extend size ranges? They replied, in the longer term, yes, we are committed to size inclusivity. However, it isn't something that can be easily added. Extending your size range requires extra resources, including new pattern specs and more detailed fittings. These sizes cannot easily scale up with the same grade rules as in Australia 4 through 16. As we grow and add more resources to our team, we will continue to improve. With that said, we are committed to quality and committed to our fits being consistent and easy fitting. We don't want to do something if it's not done well. We want all our customers to feel like the best version of themselves in our pieces. Well, this is a common response. We'll work on it in the future, etc. I will just say at this point, they have made the choice to serve customers that are on the more slender side of the size range, and I don't consider that to be size inclusive. So I think that's a whole other conversation that we could have in a different video, but I will just leave this at that. There's nothing that is issue-free. Of course, there are degrees. It's not all equal. The impact of those issues is not the same. But ultimately, we have to look at things, take the information we can get, and make choices for ourselves based on our own values, our own resources, our own time to research these things, our own finances, our own level of expertise, and understanding what these different textile terms mean. And oh my gosh, It's exhausting. How can any of us be expected to know all the things about these systems that are intentionally made very opaque as to obscure and hide the issues in the first place? I find it interesting that crochet often is the catalyst for this conversation because, yes, crochet requires lots of counting. Wait.
2, 4, okay. And then that middle bit, wait, 6, okay, that was 3. 1, 2, 3. Oh, I did 4. No, it's supposed to be 3.
I find it interesting that crochet is often the catalyst for this conversation, and I'll see this very often pop up again, especially when it starts to get chilly outside, and if crochet is trending, and then we start to see those $5 crochet hats in the store, and people will say, crochet can't be made by machine. Every single stitch has been done by human hands, and that is true, but also none of the clothes we wear are entirely made by machine. That's not a thing that can happen. There are still people sitting at sewing machines, sewing those pieces together. There is no machine that you can shove a bolt of fabric into one end and have pop out button-down shirts at the other end. A person is sewing those pieces together. A person is putting facings and bindings on to everything we wear. Even this cardigan I have, this is silk. I got it from a thrift store. This was made by machine. Like the fabric itself was made by machine, but a person stitched this together. A person took this to a sewing machine and sewed it together, possibly a serger, depending on what kind of a seam we're looking at. People assemble our clothes. All of our clothes are handmade. I find it interesting that crochet is usually the catalyst for this conversation about every stitch is handmade. And I think possibly it's because crochet is very, like, you can look at it, you can see the stitches. You can conceptualize a person sitting with a hook like I am doing this exact thing. And I think it's a good illustration for the point that human people are involved in the creation of these things. But I also think we need to remember that all of the things involve human people. And so when we purchase a crochet dress, as I saw them popping up on different fast fashion websites now, and they are stealing the images from Verge Girl. They're using the exact same images, or the paparazzi pictures, they're popping up everywhere, and they're selling this dress for like $20, $30. I think part of it for me too is just the understanding that that person was occupied for, 12, 15 hours to make one garment. There's like a volume of production, right? And I think that's why crochet is a good illustrative example. And plus, you can't say, oh, but you can, use a knitting machine, right, to make the fabric. Just like we have machines that weave nowadays. We don't have, everything's not woven by hand. But then again, people have to assemble it. People are sitting at sewing machines. So are those people in a healthy, safe, fairly compensated working environment? I don't know. But because we live in this world, we end up participating in it for, you can't be naked at the grocery store. We all have to wear clothes. I'm sure a few people at least have already run to the comment section to say, but Evie, there's no ethical consumption under capitalism. And while I think that's true, I also think that we need to engage with the world as it is. And I think that all of us doing what we can do, it helps us feel empowered. It helps us feel like we can make a difference. And eventually companies will hear that message. Maybe I'm being too hopeful, but I'd rather live being hopeful than to live in despair. And so that's just the choice I make. It takes hard work, And shopping intentionally, I'm not gonna lie, it's exhausting. It wears me out sometimes, you know, but I'd rather do something than nothing. I would rather, you know, share these ideas and hopefully give people a little inspiration to do the same than to just throw up my hands and say it is the way it is. Companies have to handle that. I can't do anything about it. I'd rather live in a way that aligns to the world I'd like to see. So what do? Well, I'd like to give you a couple of ideas. There is a petition to get certain companies, especially right now they're focused on Levi's, to participate in an accord that was started after the Rana Plaza tragedy. I will have linked down below. There's a list of companies that have not signed the accord. We are going to name them. There's no excuse. There's no excuse. There's no excuse to put the people who make the items that you make money off of in situations where they could be harmed, lose their lives. There's no excuse. There's no excuse. So we can all sign that petition, and I'll have a link to that in the video description below. I think a lot of people who are going to be showing up on this channel already make a lot of your own things, and I think that's one of the #1 most awesome things to do. It's so rebellious, right? Because ultimately making your own stuff is saying, I'm not participating in your terrible system. I'm removing myself from a chunk of that mess. So if you can sew your own clothes, that's great. But also, back to crochet, I do think that crochet is a very accessible yarn craft for people to get started in. And you can make some really beautiful looking pieces. Knitting as well. Knit some sweaters and then let that be your sweater for the winter. That's it. Like, don't go buy more sweaters because you made one and it's fabulous and it fits exactly your body because you made it to. I think that for me, one of the things, if I have to buy something new, if I can't find it thrifted, I don't have time to make it myself, there's an item of clothing that I need to have, you know, I think that having 3 specific things that I can look for when I'm finding a place to shop can help me not feel so overwhelmed. I asked my Discord, what 3 things, if they have to buy something new, what are 3 things that you look for in a company? And I encourage you to come up with 3 things and then do your best to find something that fits those 3 things. And those 3 things can align with your personal ethics, your needs, your desires. I would love for you in the comments to let me know what are your top 3 things that you want to prioritize when you are shopping for your own clothes. On the Discord, a lot of people also mentioned that they struggle when it comes to clothing for their spouse or their children. They have a good time thrifting and making their own clothes, but handmade clothes for a whole family is quite a full-time job on its own. So what do we do for them? Well, for me, I wanted to share this because this has been great for my family. I take my kids thrifting and I teach them how to look for quality fabrics, how to, you know, do some basic mending, how to, you know, look for styles and fashions that will be a little bit timeless. I think that a big part of making changes and making a difference in the way that we consume clothing is to educate people around us. That's my goal and hope with this video, that it would educate people who maybe didn't know or understand, like, what's the deal with fast fashion. I do think that there is quite a wide spectrum between the worst of the worst fast fashion and the most local, natural, organic, you know, handmade, fair wage made things. I think there's a spectrum there. And, you know, we're not going to all be able to afford the most ideal, ethically aligned options because things cost money. But we don't also have to just close our eyes and go to the other end of things, you know, like those big ones that are very egregious, I would say, like Shein Amazon and you know, those kinds of things. Like, I just outright avoid those. Levi's I'm boycotting, and the other companies that haven't signed the accord I'm boycotting. All of those, I'm on a personal mission. I hope you'll join me. But you know, like Verge Girl, maybe you appreciate that they keep their season runs very small, and maybe you live in Australia and so they are local to you, and so that reduces shipping. Maybe you appreciate that they design their own fashions and they don't push for multiple collections in a single season. Maybe those are things that are important to you, the natural fibers that they do offer. So maybe that is a place that you would want to shop. You know, for me, I personally won't, because they're not size inclusive, so there's not a lot I could choose from there, but also the shipping for me in America is a bit far, so personally I would look for a different option that is maybe more local, maybe you know, produces their clothing in a country that I know has better oversight and regulations on the work environments and you know, fair wages and all of those things. Because I think that ultimately doing any of our consumption with intentionality and awareness is going to be better than just mindlessly closing our eyes to the problems and going about things. And so let's all encourage each other to make the best choices that we have access to, that we can make for ourselves. Thank you very much to Hooks and Needles for sponsoring this video. If you'd like to support the channel, checking out the sponsor is a great way to do so. I will wish you happy spinning, happy sewing, crafting, making, crochet. I will see you all in the next one, where I will be sewing some outfits because I need a few new clothes in my wardrobe, and that's how I'm going to do that.